Alright guys, today I'm going to go ahead and talk through a little bit of advice in character selection for new players. We have here basically all the 10 character cards from the base game. We've got 3 military leaders, 3 pilots, 3 political leaders, and 1 support character. There are certain characters that are easier to play and others that are harder to play. So I just kind of wanted to go through that today and give you some good advice as far as good players, excuse me, good players to select. First off, let me go over the players that I definitely would not select in my first game, or maybe even my first couple of games. And those are Boomer and Rosalind. Okay, so Rosalind, and I'll explain their cards, a little bit more in detail later. But the reason for both of those is that both of those players have very powerful abilities that give them where they have to choose between crisis cards. And if you haven't seen a few games worth of crisis cards, it's actually kind of hard to make that choice well, and you actually end up making the choice poorly, and quite a few times, and end up getting pegged as a Cylon, even if you're a human, and worse than even being pegged as a Cylon when you're a human. You're making bad choices for the humans, and it's hard enough for the humans as it is. So these characters are difficult to play, but like I said, their abilities are really strong. So for an advanced player, they're really fun, but their drawbacks are also really, really big. So again, these are just hard players to play, but they're fun. And so I'll talk about them more in detail in a separate video about them individually. So another player that I would that would be sort of low on the list, but not at the bottom, would be Baltar. He's actually one of my favorite players to play. He's not as hard as Boomer or Rosalind, but his downside is that he's more likely to be a Cylon, and from the beginning of the game, and that's just difficult if you're a new player to know how to play that well. It's just you're always under suspicion when you choose Baltar. So he tends to be a little more difficult to play. Pretty much all the other players are good, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of identify the best 2 players, and those are Apollo and Starbuck, or I should say, probably the most popular 2 players for new players. Now, in general, playing as a new player, I generally recommend trying to get a pilot. They are a lot of fun to play as a new player. They're pretty straightforward, and it's just cool to be able to blow things up. Okay, so pilots are good, and of the pilots, Apollo and Starbuck are good. Hilo is a military leader, but he also counts as a pilot because he draws piloting cards, and he can go pilot a Viper. So he's kind of one of the top players. So I'll go into Apollo and Starbuck in more detail in a separate video, but they're both really good to play. Your kind of middle of the pack characters would be Hilo and Chief and Zarek and Ty, and actually Adama too. So really, any of those guys, they're fine. They're not too hard to play. They're a lot of fun. They got a lot of good things, and their downsides aren't so bad. So if you get a chance to grab Apollo or Starbuck, go for it. Otherwise, try to grab one of those other 3, or one of those other 5, and I'd probably put them, in the order of maybe Hilo, Chief, Zarek, Ty, or Ty Zarek is kind of hard to say, and then Adama. So, but anyway, read the characters and just see which one sounds like more fun to you. Okay, I'm going to do follow-up videos after this, detailing each of the characters and how to play them.